You know, I remember last year, March, thinking at the start of the worldwide crisis that happened. I'm always switching words because I'm very aware of the algorithms and the issues. So I normally speak a lot faster. I think I'm taking my time because I'm having to work out the lines, the sentences that I'm saying, because a lot of them include words that I could very readily and easily use, but I realize if I use those words, they'll trigger the algorithms. And at the start of last year, I thought, there's no way they're going to try and do this. There's no way, because we're all going to see through. I mean, I could see right through. I could see through when the two big towers in New York came down. I mean, the very minute that was happening, I was going, this is an inside thing, right? I mean, this is not, surely they don't think people are going to believe this. This is all about demolition, getting a new look for the city, which they did. You know, it turned into a brand new building. And the building became the new symbol of the new dispensation, because just as the age of grace comes to an end, so too is a new age coming into place for them. So they're going to have their own age. And I really began to realize that governments had lost. They were all in collusion. And, you know, when you study systems and you study propaganda and you study, when I say study, I mean you really look into things. You know, you use your discernment and you begin to figure out why the world works the way the world works. You become a very good judge of character, and you start to, because you make so many mistakes. I mean, I've run, you know, companies, businesses. I've met many, many people, and you come across a lot of shysters, you know, people that are questionable, and you have to be very good, otherwise you lose a lot of money very quickly, and then things become a bit more challenging. And I think it's in part because, you know, I've got an amazing dad who has always taught us to be discerning and quick-witted and really think through things and take actions very quickly, do things quickly. Don't sit and do nothing. Take an action forward, even if it's a bad action. Just move forward, because if you're not moving forward, you're not getting better, you're not growing, you're not chiseling away at what's underneath the rock. So I very soon realized, when it started happening last year, that this whole thing was not going to go down well for them, because it was so blatantly obvious that it was a confidence trick. And I think with good research, you start to realize that it's not, there's nothing reputable about what they're doing. You know, this is all about getting what they need. Because if it was about saving lives, then they wouldn't be ignoring the big babies at the feet of Baal question, right? There'd be organizations all over the world that are all about planned. I think you know what I'm talking about. These organizations would be shut down if it was about saving lives. You know, and we've seen this. There's a fantastic pastor online, and I started following him about a year or so ago, called Apologia Studios, and you can see how he really talks out about this. You know, he has a very powerful calling upon his life to really save the lives of innocent youngsters, infants. So it went right out the window. All the credibility that this enemy was supposed to have went right out the window. And if you study warfare, strategic warfare, Lao Tzu, The Art of War, I think there's a book by Paul Pressman, I think it is, Jeff Pressman, and it's about the war of art. And you really, really read and discover things like the best case scenario, the book. You know, you really get to understand that the world really must continue to have this patina of reliability, of legitimacy, because if it's gone, you lose your faith in the system. You lose your faith completely. I've lost my faith completely in the system. To me, it's all unrighteous. It's all evil. Governments, elite, parliamentarians, politicians, they're all guilty. They're all going straight to the pits, you know. I mean, there are always exclusions to that. There are always people who are in positions of power and they're restraining, they're holding back darkness and evil, and they're aware of it, and they won't allow things to get out of hand. They just won't. And for that reason, they kind of maintain a belief system that it's better them than someone else, so they keep their position, but they restrain, which is good. But it's very few and far between. There are very few people in all industries, all areas of life that are actually doing the right thing. But it's that small group that's the light and the salt. Those are the ones that give taste to the food and really do provide what's valuable in the world. So yeah, I believe we've really lost our respect for corporate governance, for institutionalized learning, academia. It's all lied to us, all of it. I can't think of one institution that has treated me properly. I look at government agencies, they stand in the way of progress. They are slow. They don't allow you to get to where you need to get quickly enough. They place blockades, stymieing blocks constantly in front of you. You can't get to where you need to get. You have to apply for permissions and permits, and it costs you money, and there's all kinds of, totally illegitimate money-making scams along the way that make you extremely resistant, And then they use the money against you. So they use the monies that you have paid them to build these edifices and, place themselves at a distance from you so that they can have the best counsel, the best, the best marketers, the best of everything. So they separate themselves from you, from being able to service you properly. When I went to universities, both situations were terrifyingly bad. They sell you big on studying, and you get all excited, and then you arrive and you realize you can't question the system at all. They've boxed you in, again, I'm generalizing. Please, there's always good in every situation. Understand that. But, you realize that most of the professors and doctors and all of the people that are in positions of higher learning, and they're supposed to be teaching you and showing you the way, they are negligent. They don't pay attention to your requirements. They make themselves unavailable. They're in positions of such power that you can't approach them. They're unapproachable. And when you question ideas in books and their ideologies, that are playing out in the world, and you definitely can add value to the system, they treat you like you have no voice, like you're there to fit into their box learning. There was somebody online that said something interesting, and I'll probably quote this. He said, loosely, I'll quote this very loosely, I'll ad-lib this for a little bit. I think his comment was that, once you get a master's degree, you're basically being told that you now have the degree that belongs to the master. In other words, you're quite able to now recycle back into the world what the master taught you. So you have no free thinking of your own. And that's scary. That's very, very sad, because we really don't have the freedoms that we thought we had. And academia let me down in a really big way. I studied different disciplines, and I soon realized that the things that I was going to be doing in the outside world were not really what I wanted to do, because they didn't live up to the ideological belief that I had that those things would fulfill those requirements. I wanted to do good in the world. I wanted to be a valuable solution maker. I wanted to be a valuable builder of ideas and companies, and motivate staff and encourage and bring value and light into the world. But again, all of the professions that I had to labor under as associate, as none of those things worked. None of those options for being a part of the system worked for me. I found the system stymieing as well, and not desiring to grow, not desiring to be interested in any form of new idea. They weren't interested in any form of new idea. These are very old professions. They're very, very old professions, and they don't take well easily to changes. They don't like change. Change is not something that they want. And working for companies, law firms that were desperately out of date. I remember one time there was a firm that didn't even have a computer. They had typewriters, and they were filling in the claims form on a typewriter. All of the forms, form whatever, 38 form, they were all typewritten. And I suggested maybe a computer, and they were like, nah, it's the way they've always done it. And I thought, well, thank God. It's great when the system is so antiquated that it's just so slow. And that's why businesses, innovative businesses, people with action-taking skills are able to do so much so quickly and so efficiently, because they operate as small businesses much faster, much more efficiently than these large conglomerates, these big corporations or big government agencies that are just slow, slumbering behemoths, And I realized the beauty of being able to be a freelancer or a free agent, I should say, an entrepreneur was exciting. I liked the idea of being able to do things quickly, develop, just get on with it. And I failed in many, many areas along the way, many, many areas. And I came from a Christian background. My mum prayed for us. She was raised in a Catholic convent. and they beat her up pretty badly. They would lock her away in a cupboard. It was a terrible thing for her, and she hated religion. She hated Catholicism very, very much. She felt that it was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. It was a mind jail, a mental jail for her. And she didn't want anything to do with religions. And when she eloped with me, with my dad, but with her baby, me, the last thing she wanted was religion. Within a few years of living in a new country, my mother realized she needed help. My dad worked on the mines. He was while he was studying, doing his psychology or legal degree. He was always involved in so many different things. He was working, and he worked many, many long hours. And my mum was alone in a series of Baptist congregation, met up with her and loved on her a lot. And they soon made her realize that, being a Christian was not Catholicism. They were two completely different things. And soon they asked her to renounce her Catholicism, which she did, and she became a Baptist. She, at first reluctantly, but eventually she realized the value of having people, as an infrastructure, as a support group around her that would help her. And in a new country, she needed that, and she couldn't even speak English properly. So I started going to Sunday school at a very young age, and I remember getting gold stars. They used to put a little gold star on your forehead when you were pretty good at something. I don't know what I was good at, but they would put these gold stars. Sometimes I had 4, 5, 6, 7 gold stars, which was great. And when they ran out of gold stars, they would put little green stars or little yellow stars or silver ones or whatever. And I always remember not liking the yellow and green ones too much. I just wanted the gold one. I wanted the gold stars. And a million things could have happened to me. I could have died in a million ways, because in those days, there were no fencing around pools. I was alone a lot of the time. All of the houses in the area, they all had pools. Nobody had fencing. I would sometimes just be let go out of the house. And yes, my mum was very good and very vigilant, but I spent so much time just with friends and all over the place at a young age, and it's hard to believe this, but in those days it was pretty safe, to roam around the little valleys and the little, just all the little areas in and around that neighborhood. There were gullies, there were foofy slides. I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of like a fly fox, and there was just so many adventures. Maybe there weren't that many adventures, but it felt like there were quite a few adventures, because I was always on a bicycle, going places and doing things and meeting people. And my very first business was, and I must have been like very, very young, but one of my very first businesses was buying up all the raisin boxes from all the kids at school, right? I was 4 or 5, and I remember I liked the idea that I liked these raisins a lot, and kids were buying these things. But I realized that many of them didn't actually finish eating their raisins, or they bought a box of raisins or an extra box of raisins, but these were tiny little boxes of raisins. So that became like, and then, I started to realize that I could collect money on the streets from people for doing things. I would literally be very open and say to them I was busy, building a wall or painting something, or building a model, a miniature, or a robot. I used to like androids and robots and sci-fi things. And people would just say, yeah, sure. They must have thought, 5-year-old kid, he wants how much? Give him $10, five rand, 10 rand, whatever. And, I remember my mum praying for me a lot. She would always pray. And quietly, never with my dad around, because my dad wasn't really a believer. He didn't, and I'm not knocking him. My dad's, incredible man, very dynamic, very smart, always busy. And I spent a lot of my life not really, how do I say this? I did spend a lot of my time with my dad. He was very good at teaching me and creating an inquisitive mind. He gave me a lot of critical thinking skills. He would, if I asked him a question, he would ask it back to me in a different way, And I always remember him saying, who built the pyramids and how do they build them? And, here's a book, open it, and in there you'll find answers. And I would go into these books and pore over them and just look for answers. And I lived haphazardly. I wanted to be the head prefect in my school, and I eventually got to be prefect. Not head, but I almost got to head prefect. But I was intrigued by the fact that I got to an SCA, Student Christian Association, and over lunch times we would pray and sing. And there's something about that. There was a very small number of people in my school that joined this SCA. And I didn't know what to make of it. To be honest with you, I didn't know what to make of it. I knew that it was something. There was something there. Maybe it was connected to my mum's praying. Yeah, I didn't know what it was. I just knew there was something of value there, but I couldn't figure it out. It gave me a sense of self-image that was kind of valuable, because I could see my friends doing all sorts of wrong things, and they were getting into trouble, and I could see the difference. I could really figure out who was good and who wasn't. I could see the kids that were doing the wrong things, and they were very popular, and they had girlfriends, and and they normally had the girl I wanted, which was a bit sad, because I remember this one girl that I was very excited about, and I really liked her, but I could never get to say hello to her because she always had somebody around her, and it was always one of these bad guys, these guys that did all the wrong things. And needless to say, at a very, very, very young age, this very girl that I really, really liked landed up in a lot of trouble. So God's hand was always on me, right from the very beginning, but I didn't know that, not for a long time. And I went through primary school, and then I went through, and then I went through secondary school, high school, and somewhere around the age of 16, I personally gave my life to Christ. I actually got on my knees and I gave my life to Christ. And I'll never forget it, because my mum was hosing the garden outside, and she saw me do that. She actually saw me on my knees praying. And that evening she, at dinner, said to everybody, announced it with my dad in earshot, and she said, Michael was praying. I saw him on his knees praying to God. And she was laughing, and I thought, it's the worst thing that could have ever happened. I feel so mocked. I felt terrible. I felt so embarrassed, and I just felt like whatever I believed, I had to keep quiet and secret, which is very sad. I went through matriculation, and I always kept praying to God. In fact, I remember having my own diary, and I wrote letters to God saying, mostly asking him for things. God, can you do this? Can you do this for me? Can you do that? But I always had God in the background. I was always communicating with God, because I remember I was very young. I must have been maybe 9 or 10. And one afternoon, I went with my friends after school, without my mum knowing, to a caravan park. And I was on a slide. It wasn't a slide, sorry. I was on a swing. And I jumped off the swing and landed on the ground, not realizing that the swing had gone for the pendulum and came right back and hit me on the head. And I broke my head. It cut my head. And I was bleeding like crazy. And these people in this caravan park had no idea who I was. They only knew that I was the friend of one of the kids in the park. So they had to run around with me trying to find a nurse, a hospital that they could stitch me up. And I was just bleeding like crazy. And they didn't know how to access my mum. They didn't know who my mum was, because I was with another 9-year-old who had no clue. And in those days, there were no mobile phones. There was just, old-fashioned phones that you would dial. And my mum went crazy trying to find me. She had no idea what had happened to me. She was new, in a new country. She couldn't speak English properly. The country at that time wasn't very dangerous, but there was always that risk that a young kid, might go missing and something might happen. And you can imagine. I mean, I lost blood. I was unconscious. I couldn't even remember. All that they could do was take me back to the school and just hope my mum would show up. And she did eventually. I don't know if that's how the story went, because I've never checked with her. But I think my mum, she said she prayed and 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 prayed. And something said to her that I was fine and that I would be returned home. And I thought, that's amazing. How do you know that, Mom? How do you know that? How do you know that God told you that? And she was like, I just, And that was really incredible, because it made me realize that there's a being that's listening, and he's talking, and he makes you see and feel things, and he has a communication with you if you just listen. And I became very aware of this since I was about 8, 9. Anyway, I definitely had God in my life the whole time. But I really did give my life to Christ when I was about 16. And as I said, I dropped to my knees and I prayed and I said, Jesus, come into my heart. Be my Lord and Savior. I love you. Thank you for the Holy Spirit. Thank you, Jesus. I believe you died for me, and I believe that you rose again. And if it wasn't for you, I'd be in trouble. And I thank you for being with me. Amen. And from that moment on, I went to university, and that let me down very badly, because it was a long story, because the first university I went to was very blatantly anti-God. All the professors, all of the doctors were anti-God. And I was very shocked, because suddenly there was no student council. There was a student representatives council, but there was no Christian council. And those are those days, right? I mean, you'd expect there would be Christian affiliations or affiliates, or there'd be some form of religious grouping, but no, nothing. Not for Christians, and there was no Bible on campus. No Bible. I mean, I could read all the books on campus. I could read Bhagavad Gita, which I did. I read all these books, all of them. I read over the years, I've read 47 of the world's religions. Bhagavad Gita, Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. I've read the Quran. I've read the Sumerian texts. I've read the Emerald Tablets. I've read the Popol Vuh, the Ramayana, the Ramaya. I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I think I've said that one. I've just read like one after another, just many books. And I've even read some others that I don't particularly think they're religions, but they're ways of thinking that are very disturbing. Some of them are really strange, and at first I didn't understand it. I thought, well, they must all have something, right? I read the Vedic texts, massive, 12 volumes. They're like bricks, giant bricks. And they read like science fiction almost. And because they got flying chariots, Vimana, and they've got, it's just, wow, so intense. But what I was really intrigued by was I could not find a Bible. And it wasn't like I was looking for a Bible. It wasn't like I felt it was weird. I just felt, oh, it's the one book they don't have. None of the libraries had it. The Wharton Weiler Library didn't have it. And even at the other university, they did not have the Bible, which was interesting. Like, why would you not have? Anyway, I didn't question it too much because I was so busy getting to just figure things out, And about that time, I got very involved in mysticism and New Age and Spiritism, and I started reading the Kabbalah and the Zohar and then I came across the Torah because I thought, oh, the Torah, And then I realized the Torah is part of the Bible, which I was quite excited about, but it was really hard to read, and I gave that up. And then later, I read the New Testament. I came across, somebody gave me a little white New Testament, and I went through it from beginning to end. It was just the New Testament. And again, I was intrigued by Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. They were sort of saying the same things. What was the difference? And then I became very aware of eyewitness accounts. I think I ignored Revelation for a bit, but then because one thing about me is if I start on something, I must finish it. So if I get a book, I must finish it. I'll always finish it. And it drives me crazy because I have to finish things, I really have this thing that I must finish what I start, no matter what it is. And I normally have a designated target. So I will say, I will do that, and I will do it for 50 days, or I'll do 100 programs, or I'll do the series of Hardy Boy books, or, I'll do constitutional law. I'll do torts, I'll do American legal systems, or whatever. I've got a very specific thing that I will start and finish. I will start and finish. I'll start a business and I'll get to X amount of money, and then that's it. Then for me, it's like, okay, I either re-goal it, retarget where I'm going, create new milestones, or I pull out. But normally, if it's going well, I'll just keep going. At a very young age, I wanted properties. So I bought lots of properties. I even bought my mum's property. So I took over her payments. So I just wanted properties. I liked the idea of buying properties. And because they were just so easily offering properties, I was buying them left, right, and center. With small deposits, I was just buying up property. And that gave me enough of an equitable base to start to do things. And I looked good on paper, very good on paper. Never mind that I was working crazily just to pay for everything. And I enticed staff and people that came to work for my companies with property. Like I said to them, come and work for me, you get free accommodation, you get a free car. So I was really trying to find ways to give, because I had it. It was installed capacity in business. That's what it's called. I thought, let me utilize the installed capacity and offer what nobody else can offer. So I had some really nice people working with me. But God took a second place. He wasn't that important. I mean, he was, but he wasn't, because we become so enamored with making money and driving the very best of the best. I drove a 735i, a 500 SL, a 320 SL, a 200 SL, and 180, and all kinds of cars. So and I had lots of little things. I collected Rolex watches, and I went to Kenny Mervis, and every 6 months or 4 months or whatever, I would buy one more Rolex watch. I had some Mariners and Yacht Masters and Jubilee bracelet ones and all kinds of material possessions. And I was funding projects. I was actually making enough money to fund projects. And God, in an amazing way, was really building me up and building up my skills and abilities. Did you hear that? Skills and abilities. I do that. It's an unusual thing. I bring words together all the time, and I bring them together in my head very, very quickly, and sometimes scarily. It's a something. I think it was Tony Factor who said. He said he had the same problem, that sometimes he would have words in his head that were made up words because he was joining them in his head so quickly. We became good friends. I got to know a lot of Jewish people because they're very good business owners. And I learned a lot from business owners that were Jewish people. And I was so fascinated and so intrigued. I knew so many of them, right? Michael Zwick, Selznick, Kenny Mervis, Nicky Oppenheimer, Mark Tweedy, Mark Irvine, one after another. So many different business owners. Steve Kirsch, E.C. Kirsch, at 702, Stan Katz, just a lot of people. And because I was always so involved with high-end business people, I was involved with the owners of Greaterman's and Checkers Warehouse, and I worked for Checkers Warehouse for a very long time. I put radio stations into place at many of the shopping centers we had. At one stage, we had a lot of radio stations operating at East Rand Mall, Benoni, Brackpan, Kempton Park, Big D, the Village Shopping Center, all the drive-in theaters, cinemas, and I mean lots of them, like Atlas through to, there was so many ads being sold, and I had so many. I think we had like 12 DJs at one stage, and we were producing commercials like this, and the money, I wouldn't say it was just like coming in a big way, because it was, but not so much that I was like completely rich, but I looked good on paper. And what happened was, I made a decision that I didn't want to live in South Africa. I wanted to travel to the US. I wanted to live in the US. And I went back and forth to the United States many, many times. And I was always going to live in California or in Florida. But my green card was taking too long. Bernie Wolfsdorf Associates were quite slow at getting it all together. And I remember meeting with some people in California at Palisades, Pacific Palisades, and they were going to organize for me to come and live in the U.S. And I had a motion picture distribution production company called something different to the one I currently have. and I would travel. I would travel back and forth to the United States. And at one stage, I was like in the US for about 6 months. And the objective there was to set up shop in the US. But again, I think it was an N1, whatever it was called. The green card was taking way too long, and I thought I need a backup. And at the time, I had a record company called Icon Head Records, which had a lot of artists, but it wasn't making any money. But it wasn't losing money either, but it wasn't making any money. And I had a band called Kenrich Crew that was actually doing quite well. And Sony wanted them. And I thought, well, what's Sony offering? And eventually, I think Sony paid enough for me to sell the company, like literally just palm it off. And again, I looked good on paper. And I had an accountant do my books. And basically, I heard that Australia was a country that could potentially be a place to live because I needed a backup. I mean, America was just taking too long, and I didn't like the gun violence in the US. It was very, very scary. Every time I arrived in the US, it was like, whoa, some shooting in some school somewhere. And I had some bad experiences in America, you know. I love Americans. I really do. I think they're the most amazing people. I've always had a passion for Americans for lots of reasons. You know, they live grandly and they do big things and they think big, and you know, and I kind of thought I'll probably still get around to the US. I'll probably still set up a company in the US, but in the meantime, I'll have a backup and I will expand the companies to Australia. And I arrived in Australia, funny enough, with money, because most people arrive in a new country with no money. I had money. I actually had converted a lot of my money to gold coins. And I had a lot of gold because at that time it was just about to tick over into the millennium. It was about to become 2000, and everybody was worried about the millennium bug. Don't know why anybody was worried about the millennium bug. I remember my dad saying, nothing's going to happen, I assure you, because look, if I change the clock on the computer, look, nothing happened. And he was right, nothing happened. But I'd collected a lot of gold coins in case something happened. I felt, what if the world comes to pieces? You know, I need to have a backup. Anyway, that was then. And I remember there was a lady who ran my record company, and I'd met through David Gresham Records. I met a lady called Candy. Her name was Candy Burnett at the time. She wasn't married to Peter Bowman yet. And she was the one who got me to Australia mentally, because one day I had everything happening for the US. It looked like it was going ahead. And I spoke to her on the phone, and we'd had a dinner. We sat down, had a dinner. It was really great. She was just a beautiful person. And I said to her, so what are you doing? She was like, oh, I'm going to Australia. I said, Australia? What's Australia? Where's Australia? I mean, of course I knew where Australia was, but kind of didn't. She was like, oh, it's like Disneyland for adults. It's like La La Land. And I thought, La La Land? What does that mean? She was like, it's just a beautiful place. You know, there's no walls, there's no fences, there's no, it's a nice place. So that stayed in my mind. There was this ideal, this utopia. And I kind of had this application happening with Australia at the same time as I was working on the US. And eventually the US was just taking way too long. And Australia came through really quickly. And I think within 2 or 3 months, maybe even less, it was like so quick, of Australia saying, yeah, come over. I was in Australia. You know, I was landing in Australia and I was setting up in Australia. And then I ran companies and businesses. At first I worked for a company for 2 years, getting to know the people and getting to know the ins and outs and how the Australian psyche works. But eventually I kind of figured it out, because I thought, you know what? I can do this better because what they're doing is slow. I can do this fast and efficient, and I'm sure that I can pull, new business in quite quickly. And it was funny because they were busy producing these commercials for small amounts of money. And I thought, why are they taking so long? I contacted a Singaporean company that had just arrived. They were actually on the same street as the studio that we were in. And I called on them and they said, yeah, we're from Singapore. We've got X amount of money. And my first contract was with eGuide from Singapore, eguide.sg. Never forget that. And they gave me a huge amount of money. Like, I'm talking about, it was more money than I'd earned for 2 years doing freelance commercials, getting paid $5,000 a commercial. Okay. I was getting, from this company alone, I was making, I don't want to exaggerate, but it was like 30 or 40 times more. And I suddenly went, so why am I working for somebody? Because I was always working for myself. I started working for myself, and I don't mean that arrogantly. I mean that, I was sort of an entrepreneur right from the beginning. I was 16 or 17 when I had my legitimate registered first company, Proprietary Limited. So I thought, no, I'm gonna do this. I can do this. And I set up a company, and and it doesn't matter what the problems were, because I've got all kinds of things which I never try to speak about because I don't want to. But I thought, you know what? No matter how badly I do this or that or right or whatever, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a try. I will work like crazy, and I'll do better than anybody else. And I soon amassed a really good showreel of material. And I didn't want to convert my degree. My degree is my law degree. I thought, I don't really want to practice. It's not something I want to do. I don't like the idea of billing people, by the wanting 10 billable hour. I don't like the very belligerent way that people in that profession go about doing things. I'm more of a friend, more of a, I'd rather choose conciliation, mediation, or arbitration before I pick formal or primary dispute resolution. I mean, for me, it's all about making friends and not destroying relationships. And I didn't like the idea of being in an office. I like to do things. I like adventures. I liked traveling. You can't do it now, but I liked adventures, and I really loved the idea that we were surrounded by islands, and Australia had so many travel destinations. So I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll use my skills and my abilities to raise money, put projects into place, raise large funds for other people and for my own projects, but use my abilities to do what I love doing and travel and go on adventures. And and that was good. That was what it was all about. And then things started to become a little bit more about where I was going, and God was so gracious and so good to me, because I could have gone wrong in so many places. There were so many things that were not right in my life. I had so many issues in so many areas. I was buying businesses, I was buying properties, I had to deal with all kinds of things. And I was getting rid of things as well fast, because as I bought, I would develop and sell them off. And then things became very, very challenging. After 2008, I started to lose quite a lot of money. There was a property development that I was working on, and I lost a lot of cash because of the 2008 situation. But God was still good to me, because I got out just before the crash, which was really good. and I needed to pay off some business partners and buy them out. And, it was just a challenge. And Australia is not like overseas where you can buy properties very easily. Australia is very, like, if you don't fit inside a box and you actually work for a boss, you can't buy properties easily. So I rented for a long time and all kinds of things happened. But again, I had these, always businesses on the boil. My partner relationship situation, so challenging all the time. And I just kept praying, God, please bring that together properly, because I can't go on like this. It's so difficult, and eventually I just went through this huge hiatus of just nobody in my life, and I was hurt. I was in a lot of pain. And I started getting closer to God. But I was also not getting closer to God. I don't know how to explain that. It was sort of, God, why? But at the same time, I was just living the high life. I was never home. I was always out at dinners, meeting clients, doing things. Business was my number one. And of course, lots of life changes happened. It's 4 a.m. I'm a bit tired. I literally have had 3 hours of sleep last night. And for weeks, I've just had strange, erratic hours. But I'll finish off by just saying that round about March last year, I think it was about the 11th of March, when it was announced that the world was going to go into this lockdown, I was really worried. I was worried. I was fearful. I was like, this is it. This must be the end. This is how the end goes, right? And I prayed and I said, God, I don't think I'm in a good place with you, because even though I've always loved you but it's always been you're always at a distance. Like I'm just doing my own thing. And I'm worried. I'm kind of scared. What's going to happen? And I sort of had this feeling that, I think about 2 weeks later, that I had this feeling, don't worry, just don't be fearful, because God does not give us a spirit of fear. And I knew this from years and years of reading devotionals and, reading John Eldridge books, Wild at Heart. I read all of the lots of Randy Alcorn books. I read many Christian books. But I kind of read them, I don't know how to explain it. You sort of read them, but you read them to pick you up, but you're not really focused on knowing God. So I had this base of knowledge about God, but I didn't really know God experientially yet. Although God had come through for me quite a few times, there were 2 huge events. One related to a property deal where God really came through for me in a way that was completely outside of the realm of possibility. So I know that was God. And there was another event which happened in the United States where I lost my wallet filled with money and all kinds of things. And I was stuck. I had $100 and I had to survive like a whole week before I got home. I had no passport. I had nothing. I was stranded. I had $100 to survive. And that was a terrifying moment. But God helped me throughout the whole thing. What was supposed to have been an amazing trip didn't turn out to be an amazing trip at all. In fact, it was a very scary situation I got myself into in America, because I lost all of my valuables. I lost everything. I was really stuck. So there were definitely situations, especially when I arrived in Australia, a miracle happened. And again, that was God, And the first church that I found in Australia, that was God. That was Riverview. And then I got to meet some very beautiful people. I met Philip Baker, and I met Adam Meredith, who still to this day I admire greatly. And I sort of on the outskirts of things. I was sort of getting closer to God, but not really. You know, I had written some scripts, and some of these movie storylines were very biblical, but I couldn't get the funding for Christian movies. Not easy to find money for Christian movies unless you're making a project that involves what Hollywood wants. There's no way you'll pick up the money. But I was doing other things. I set up other businesses, and other businesses seemed to be okay. Fortunately, I've always had an array of businesses. I have multiple streams of income, like Robert Allen used to talk about, and this is what inspired me to just have many businesses. But I realized I had to get good at business, because who was going to employ me? You know, I don't have much patience for working under someone else. It's not very easy for me to go with a system that's antiquated, or with forms that are just plainly not efficient. You know, I'm always finding inefficiencies in businesses and companies, so much so that at many stages, I've had people say to me, wow, you should be, you know, you should be a coach, because you're always improving companies and businesses and ideas. And so that's always been good. But as I said, 11th of March last year, things went down for me. They were like, whoa, I gotta, you know, this is ridiculous. We're in a 3-month lockdown. This doesn't work. How am I gonna survive this? I gotta still maintain my businesses. But God was good. God was good. He got me through it. And not only that, but we actually, for the first time ever, we were actually making money. Like, it was just coming from all over the place. And I was really, really happy, because I thought, you know, with this new money, I can set up a ministry. I can actually help other people come to know Christ. But here's what's fascinating about this, is that one of my brothers, I have him to thank, because if it wasn't for him, I would never really have looked into the rapture. You see, for many, many years, I'd heard people around me talk about, oh, we don't have to worry because the rapture's coming. So I was like, yeah, I'd laugh, not knowing what that meant. You know, people would always say, especially like my mum, you know, she would say, oh, I'm not worried, because if anything happens, Jesus will take me in the rapture. And I was like, the rapture? What's the, you know, I didn't know what it was. I actually didn't know. I didn't even know what it was. And my brother said to me, he said, no, look, we're going to go through this tribulation. And I said, what? No. God would never do that. It's like saying, you know, your dad's going to let you go through pain and get beheaded, and it's not going to happen. God's not going to do that. And I knew that. And I thought, and I looked at videos online of dads saving their kids all the time at the last moment, at the split-second timing. You know, they would catch their kids from a falling escalator, out of an escalator, or some crazy thing, you know, the kids were doing. And I thought, that's what a good daddy does, is he's a good shepherd. He saves his children. There's no way God would allow that. And then I started to think, what do these people talk about? They talk about the rapture. What is this rapture? And I began to research it. And let me tell you, I researched it. I really looked into it. I didn't just accepted and believed it. I went, no. I'm about to base the fundamental of my belief system, my what I believe, who God is. I'm about to base all of that on this research. I better do my research properly. So I started to really try to understand what this wegrepen is. That's an Afrikaans word for the rapture. I tried to understand what it really was, and I started to read one book after another, and I did everything I could to learn about the rapture. Hours and hours and hours of research and sermons, and everybody from Andy Woods to Chuck Missler to anybody that was talking about the rapture. I wanted to really know. Mark Hitchcock. I mean, amazing people that really, really explained it. And I started to realize the rapture is a real thing. It's not just something that we fancifully think is coming or not. And then I started to ask myself this question: why is it that some Christians don't believe in the rapture? Why is it that they don't believe? Then I realized, hold on a minute, the ones who don't believe actually belong to 5 denominations. There's actually 5 denominations that don't believe in the rapture. Everyone else does, but not these 5. It was almost like clockwork. The minute somebody said, I don't believe, or they'd attack you, or they'd say, there's no rapture, I would go, what do you believe? And they would say, oh, and they would fit into these 5 denominations. So then I went and started researching these 5 denominations, and I realized that every single one of them had a false prophet, what was called a false prophet. And I didn't know that until I actually started to hear from other sources that they weren't really reading the Bible, or if they did, they were kind of reading someone else's books as well at the same time. And I'm thinking, what? So their primary thing wasn't the Bible, it was someone else. And I was very intrigued by this. I was really intrigued, and I suddenly realized that was because they were ransomed. They were under that belief system had been hijacked by a false prophet who didn't want them to have words of encouragement. They didn't want them to have a belief in the rapture. Didn't want to give them any hope, right? So it was a little bit like taking the legs off of a table. It was a little bit like pulling the rug from underneath you. You have the religion, you have the belief system, but you don't have the hope. And for me, that was terrifying. And I understand where they're coming from, because they're saying, well, Christians go through tribulation and trials. And I was like, yeah, but not every Christian goes through trials and tribulations. What are you talking about? Another thing that those 4 of those denominations, and also other religions, don't believe in rapture either, you see, because they're all works-based. All of these are works-based. They're works-based. In fact, one of them is very specific about one particular law. And the others are all, they convert and change things. And I don't want to knock denominations, but that it's not Jesus. Who they worship is not Jesus Christ from the KJV, mainstream Jesus Christ. They're believing in a Christ that's not Christ. His life is different. He's got events in his life that are different. He's got a title or an epithet that is different. He's not Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. And that was very interesting, because it was almost like God was taking me down this path of learning, and I was just consuming fast, really fast. And what was good was because I had this base of all these other religions, right? I'd read 47 of the world's religions. And because of that, I could not only debate all these other cultures suddenly, but I could actually see the Bible for the truth that it was. I could see that Jesus is the truth. He is the living waters. He is the truth. And I realized that I needed especially because mainstream Christians weren't really sure about end times. Eschatology is not spoken about in churches, like ever. Like, I never walked into a single, actually, that's not true. There was one church I did, tiny little church in, I think in Riverton, that spoke about end times. No other church was speaking about end times. And they all avoided the Old Testament. They just sit right in the Gospels safely. And I'm thinking that's unusual. So I made it a personal mission to learn crazily, as fast as I could, everything about the Bible. So for 1 year and 8 months, I have been literally on sabbatical. I still run my companies. They're running in autopilot. But I'm just learning and learning like so much about the Bible that, in one day I will go through many Bible studies, and I've read the entire Bible, completely, and really with love and passion and just the desire to know, and praying, and and the Holy Spirit just guiding me into areas that I have been fascinated by. And I've come to realize what a beautiful gift this is, being a Christian, a lover of Jesus Christ. We are so privileged. We are so blessed. There's nothing like it. It's the most extraordinary thing. And I'm just so proud of Jesus Christ. I'll speak about him to anybody. There's no embarrassment. I publicly, openly, sometimes at great risk, speak about my Jesus Christ, my King, because I have nothing to lose. What have I got to lose? What, my life? What is my life? It's nothing. I've had so many disappointments in my life, and so many things that have not worked out the way I wanted them to work out. I can't think that I've ever been successful in anything. So many people have said, but you've done this and that, and to me that means nothing. Nothing. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't done anything. But this is the one thing I said, I'm going to do this right. This I will focus on with all my heart, my strength, my soul, my mind, my everything. Jesus Christ is my King. And since the 11th of March last year, I would probably say it's the best thing that ever happened, because it brought me really close to Christ. In other ways, it's been a very bad period for me because I've lost a lot of friends. It's amazing how many friends you leave behind who are not interested in Christ. I've had to do things very differently. My partner walked out on me, and I always thought she was a Bible reading, Jesus Christ loving person. But for whatever reason, maybe she just thought I was too much. I was suddenly just going to church all the time and just being in praise and worships and helping a very dynamic, wonderful young man who has since become, I call him my son, but he's my brother, very involved, helping as much as possible in between all the work that I'm doing, helping him with his events. So I've really come to walk with Christ. I've come to know him very differently to how I thought. Who I know God to be and who I thought God was are two very different things. God reveals himself to you, and he's incredible. He really is. Wow. He really is amazing. Now, I could go on and on. It's 4 in the morning, 4:20, and I've been at this for a while. I'm very, very tired, and I'm going to go and sleep. But this testimony is actually a lot richer and different in many other ways as well, because so many other things have also happened. But I kind of just wanted to cut to the chase and just let you know why I got into this. Is because my fear was dispelled completely when I came to genuinely research Jesus Christ, and not only the gift of salvation, but the blessed hope. I realized that there are so many people that don't know about the rapture, even just ordinary people. They have no hope. They see this as the end. They just have to accept the way things are. They have to align themselves with the evil of the world. And I'm always like, no, you don't. If you believe in Jesus Christ, not only are you saved, but you will be rescued. He will rescue you. Encourage one another with these words, right? And wow, the transformation in people when they realize that this is incredible. What? This is a rescue? It's so special. So I thought I would share that with you. I thought it's a beautiful story, and it needed to be told. I haven't told it to anybody. This is the first time it's always about Jesus. He gets all the glory. My King gets all the glory. I'm really just a nobody. I'm an instrument in his hands. I'm here to just encourage people. I love Christians. I love people. Now and again, there's a few that are like really hard work, but they teach us patience, and and normally it's because they have bad doctrine. They don't understand things. And by the way, a lot of these other very learned Christians also don't realize that when you say something that sounds like it's shocking, it's not. They don't know that you've got to study the Greek, you've got to study the Hebrew, and you will see. I made a comment the one time, which was, I said, we're angels. And, it created such a problem. And an angel is a messenger, it's like, where do they come from not knowing that? Angels are messengers. We bring the good news to people. I know I'm not an angel. I'm not talking about us being but it's just this kind of little thing that really is disturbing. And the reason I brought that up was because in a recording, I'm speaking to an Islamic lady, and believe it or not, from what I know, their perspective is that, and they understand it to be, we come with good news. We're messengers. So anyway, and I said, and we're in a fallen world, So I again, people get very about this kind of thing when there's no point. I've never said anything but we're just people. We live in a fallen world. We're broken, and we need to give our lives to Christ. We need to believe in him. We're saved not by works, not by anything we do, because nothing we do is of any value. We're not that valuable. We're just servants of our King, but we're not subjects. We are deputized kings, and we will be priests and kings in the new millennial kingdom. So that's really it. But yeah, Christians tend to get panicky when something is a little bit, and I understand that, because, now more than ever, you must be very careful of deceit. But what I'm saying is, like Dr. Michael Heiser, go into what things really mean. And when you understand what they really mean and what their functionality is in the Greek or the Hebrew or the Aramaic, it actually becomes richer and deeper, right? things have value beyond what things are on the surface. But again, you see most followers of Christ are not really disciples. Or they're just in training, right? They're not really going deep. They don't read the Bible, and they'll get bits and pieces of scripture, but they don't understand much of it, and they don't understand how to interact with other people of other faiths and speak to them in better ways. And when you're speaking to someone of a different faith, and you say to them, I'm a messenger, I'm giving you the good news, and they say to you, you're an angel because you're a messenger, you're doing a good thing. It doesn't mean you're an angel, it just means you're bringing a message. I thought I'd bring that up because, again, if you're trying to speak to people in different faiths, you really need to be able to speak to them from a place that they understand. So there you go. I hope that's clarified that and has made that clear. It's been a pleasure to have this beautiful family online that I can speak to and communicate with. And we don't make any money out of this. There's no, we run a ministry. I pretty much fund it out of my own pocket. A lot of things that happen are funded out of our own pockets. I don't think we've ever had, anytime there's been sponsorships or whatever, it's always gone into the events. Never taken $1 of anybody's money. And we're just privileged to be able to do this and to use the existing things that we have and turn those to Jesus Christ and the value of his kingdom so that it's for his glory. Thank you so much for listening. Testimony.